Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Purgatory Ironworks. I am your host, Trenton Ty, and what is better than one forge weld? 5 of them bad boys. So as we continue to do different items out of one of my favorite books called the Sorber Collection, which is a collection of colonial era wrought ironwork, there's a really cool gig, a 5-prong gig in there known as an eel gig. Now, being down here in the South, eels are not a thing. Eels are usually in northern rivers and things of that nature, just not something that's down here. Now, when I saw this thing, it's like, why in the world do they call it an eel gig? We don't have eels, because down here, it's a bullfrog gig. Whether you're gigging eels or frogs, still accomplishes the same thing. Now, the cool thing about this gig is it's made from 5 individual rods, probably not more than 1/4 of an inch thick. You can't always tell there in the book. But the crazy thing is that these 1/4 inch rods are stacked and forge welded together. Now that's going to be a bit of a monkey. As we get into the Sorber collection, I'm coming to realize just how many delicate forge welds are done in the work. If you have seen the biscuit cutter, if you've seen the trivet, you know, normally when we're doing forge welds, it's heavier pieces of metal. But I'm going to tell you, the pucker factor is strong when I'm doing stuff that's 1/4 of an inch because it can very easily melt. But I've been eyeballing this gig for some time, so we're going to do a quick version of this gig. Now the crazy thing is most of the work is going to be done off camera, just prepping the tines. We're not going to show you 5 times, where I'm going to show you 1 and then the forge weld and how we put it together. So this should be a relatively quick video, but it's going to be so cool, and hopefully I don't melt this thing. So let's get to work with some 1/4 inch rod. So guys, there's a couple ways to do this. Now again, I'm using 1/4 inch rod and I'm squaring it. The original did in fact use square rod, but square rod now, especially in 1/4 inch, really can't be gotten in what we call hot roll, which is most of the stuff that we use in the shop. We can get it as what they call key stock, but that's super expensive. So I'm just going to take this 1/4 inch rod and hammer it out into a square. Now, of course, one of the first things we need to do is to tip this. Now, in the original one I saw, there's a couple of different ways to do the barbs, or if you even have barbs at all. The one that I saw in the Sorber collection pretty much had once you got your point, you would come in with your chisel and simply lift a little barb on there, and they did that on all 5 tines. But for showing off for you guys, I want to show you a technique that I use on some of my larger fish hooks. So you can see we've got a point pulled out here. I'm going to refine it. And this is where you can kind of take your file and sharpen it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take that tip and I'm going to fold it back onto itself, because that point isn't going to be the point of the actual gig. It's actually going to be the barb. So let me take another heat. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to take about 1/2 inch and I'm going to fold it back over itself. And very carefully tippy tap it back out. And check that out, guys. Now we actually have a barb. Now you can sharpen that guy up before you turn it, but that gives us a simple barb. And in my time using a gig, I did not like gigs that had barbs on every tine. It made the frog or the fish too hard to get off. So with our piece, we are simply going to have 1 barb on this entire gig, and we're going to add 4 straight shanks to it. So I'm going to take 1 more heat and square this up, and then I got a little more work to do. Now today, we're actually going to take 4 pieces that are about 6 inches long. We're going to put them together, and of course, I'm going to do a tack weld, a modern MIG tack weld on the back side, so that we can weld it together. I suspect that the originals were done with 5 full-length bars that were wired together, held into place, and the whole stack was put into the fire, and a small well was made on one side, and then everything else was cut loose. I assume that seems like it might be the best way to go about it. I can't verify that. In fact, it might be a mess. But as I sat in the shower this morning thinking, how in the world would you get that many pieces stacked? Well, you either had to have a special pair of tongs or you had to have somebody that was really good at wiring up bars. All right. Now again, what I'm doing here is I'm just squaring this. I believe the original was square not for any aesthetic reason. It's just that was probably the stock that they got from the ironmonger. But some nice tippy taps, and you guys can see that we have a square piece here. So now I've got actually a mark on my anvil so I can figure out where to cut this thing. So I'm going to take one heat right here. We'll take our cutting hardy and drop it in here and actually hammer through it, and we'll be ready to go. As you can imagine, working with 1/4" rod is a little tough, especially if you're using coal. 1/4" rod, you could blink twice and melt a piece of 1/4" rod. So when you're working this stuff, it usually helps to keep the rod on top of the fire as opposed to poking it down into the coals. And do not step away by any means, because that 1/4" will go up super quick. A quick cut just like that. I'm gonna make sure this is nice and straight, and I can cool it and break it loose. So here is our piece, and now here are 4 other tines that I have made off camera. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set these like this. I'm going to take those over to our modern welder, and I'm going to put a weld right across this back side here so I can get in here, and I'm probably going to end up forge welding about this much, maybe about 1.25 inches up the back side, because this also has to be pulled out into the tang that will go into our handle. So let me prep this and we'll get ready for a forge weld. So here we are welded up, and again, I stress you guys, if you're going to use a cheat like I'm using, do it effectively. Make sure and put the welds in some place that's going to take a lot of hammering and a distortion. You want to make an effort to cover up any modern weld as much as you can. Jay Riekert, the guy that taught me, learned this early on, that there are tools, modern tools, that do a much better job of what we're trying to accomplish, in the old days. Now, if you're just trying to, show off and challenge yourself, no problem. But it is often much easier to try it with a bit of handicap before you bust off into full antiquity mode. So take it into account, but when you do use the modern cheats, make an effort to hide it. Now we got a good heat here. I'm going to come in with our flux, or as I used to call it, the 20 mule train fusion cocaine. We'll get a good coating, and this thing is going to be super delicate. I'm going to take a light welding heat, and then I'm probably going to slip down to a lighter hammer as well, and we are going to have to do some super delicate tippy taps to make these things come together. This is going to be something we're going to take our time with and be very slow and methodical about. Now again, these are consolidating taps. I want to keep them in line and square. And only when you've got them seated very well do you want to come back in and try for that good first forge weld heat. So I'm going to hit her with the fusion cocaine once again, and we'll bring it up to heat. Again, the lightest tippy taps. But once she seats, you can get a little bit more aggressive with it. But when you're doing this, the thing you're going to have to worry about the most is it folding over and buckling. So that's what we're trying to stay away from. Also here, what I'm going to do, because if I keep hammering like this, I'm going to bend these pieces back and forth. I'm going to try to make sure to work that weld on the shoulder like this so I'm not affecting these pieces. Now, one thing of note, this is also a great place to use an anvil block. If you can't get to that front side easily, an anvil block that gives you a smaller area to work on top helps well. Whew, it's hot out here. It helps a lot. How about that? We're going to be grammatically correct this morning. Slow and steady. We're going to reflux, and now this time, because she's now consolidated and she's kind of squished down a bit, I feel like I have enough bite to go ahead and take a full welding heat. All right, we've got a good heat there, and it's looking like everything has consolidated very well. Now again, this piece is much wider than it is thick, so be very careful and paying attention to keep it from rolling over. But I'm feeling a lot better about how this went. Check it out. Not too terrible, shabby bad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in, draw this out into our tang, and then we're going to set some of our forks here. Now, one of the things you really have to avoid is the rhombozoid. Now, if you don't know what a rhombozoid is, a rhombozoid is like if you stood a square up and shifted the top away from the bottom. So as you're working steel, and you guys that have worked these know what I'm talking about, when the steel goes out of square is the issue. And when you have something that's this tall and is much taller as it is opposed to be thick, that becomes a real particular issue if you're not careful. Make sure and correct any rhombozoid, make sure you don't make a cold shut, and you should be okay. Pulling it up, looking pretty good. Now you can see that piece on the end is actually come loose on that, so I'm going to flux it up. I'm going to see if I can't fuse that back together. Probably not going to make a whole lot of difference in the function of this item, but I still want to make it, I want to do as good a job as this piece as I can. Now, if you have a bad spot on the end of this bar, you can attempt to re-weld, but the other simple answer is just cut it off and get back to fresh metal. But that did fuse okay. And look at there, guys. That is not too terrible bad. That is not too terrible bad at all. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to heat this up. We're going to go over to our vise. I'm going to put that area right there in the vise, and we're going to spread our tongs and make our gig. Now again, when you're doing a lot of this bending, using the vise to do this can help without messing things up. I say that as I see the tines start to crush a little bit, so you have to be gentle, but you guys can absolutely see if you try to do this freehand without the vise, boy, you'd be in trouble. Now one thing I am going to do is I'm going to pop it in here. Whoa! Look at that. That might have been the smart move altogether, boys and girls. It looks like Trent may have learned something today. We put it in the other way. There we go. Who says you can't teach a old dog new tricks? Turn those up just a little bit. That is not a terrible spread. Look at me. And by the way, you guys would be correct. I've never made one of these before, so I'm learning with you. But that looks pretty darn good. So folks, our newest apprentice in the shop, Leland, actually grabbed this piece of hickory, and he was practicing his shaving horse, and he scant this up. Now this is a little, boy, if you go hunting for frogs with this bad boy, them some big old frogs. But I have worked this out. I put a ferrule on here, and I've actually piloted a 3/16 inch hole, and I want to show you guys how I burn this in. Now the idea is you want to take that hot piece and you want to burn it about 2/3 of the way in, maybe 3/4. You want to burn the channel, but you want to give yourself a way to actually hammer it in. So only about 3/4, 2/3, somewhere along in there. I'm going to bring this piece up to about 1400 degrees, and we're going to seat it in there. Again, I've got about a 3/16 inch hole in here, and you can just work it down, and I want to work it down to about right there. Now, I'll cool this, and now when I actually go in there, it'll have kind of a pre-channel, and that last little 1/4 inch will really seat it in there very well. So let me cool this down and put it in place. Now guys, before I put this in place, I just took it over to our wire brush, which again, I was explaining with this many tines, that's why we call the wire brush Mr. Grabby Throwy. But I wanted to show you the forge weld because that's pretty cool. That's 5 pieces coming into one, and I'm pretty stoked with that. Now, obviously, I could have come in and straightened these things up a little bit, but I'm going to call that good enough for government work. If I can't stab a bullfrog with this, then I don't need to be out there stabbing bullfrogs at all. But let me take this bad boy, tap it into place, and make her work. So now the other question is, how do you go ahead and completely seat this thing in there? And so I've got her in there pretty good there, and I'm just going to turn her upside down. Give her a couple taps, and she's good. And there we go, folks. We got one absolute beast of a frog digger here. Looks pretty darn good. I'm pretty stoked with this. Again, I haven't made one of these before, and that's pretty awesome. Of course, if you got the big frogs, you can catch them from long range with the spear chuck technique. But outside of that, folks, my name is Trent Ty, and I hope you have enjoyed this video today. If you enjoyed the video, this video is brought to you by the generous support of our Patreons over at patreon.com/purgatoryironworks. Got a bunch of free stuff just for signing up. Outside of that, folks, thank you so much. Comment, like, and subscribe. Do all the things. But outside of that, be safe, and I'll see you again.